On today's show, we are discussing a mother's quest to end skin woes and build a brand. We're joined by Amy Tucker, the founder of Salty Britches. Salty Britches, it's such a good name. A brand born out of a mother's need to help her son enjoy the ocean. I'm your host, Kurt Elster.
Check nasty.
And this is the Unofficial Shopify podcast. So let's hop on this roller coaster of brand creation, my friends. Amy, welcome. How you doing?
Thanks for having me, Kurt. I'm doing great.
I'm thrilled to have you. We talked a few weeks ago, and about your store, some strategy, some vision, just giving you an outside perspective. But I really enjoyed it. When I meet with someone, I go and I enjoy the conversation. I think I want to talk to them more, and also let's make some content out of that. That's really how we're getting these podcast guests.
We come to you crawling and begging for help.
Oh my gosh!
And then you're like, "Hey, there's a story here." Your help is great, by the way. It really did help.
I'm glad to hear it. I don't know about crawling and begging, but I am happy to help. So, Salty Britches. Let's start with what it is. What's your store? What do you sell?
Right. So, Salty Britches, it's a solution to saltwater chafing. We thought originally this was just a coastal solution for the ocean, for anyone that suffers from the painful irritation from spending any time in saltwater. Little did we know this would completely go a different direction than we anticipated, but now we're working a lot in the endurance space, running, any kind of backcountry, hiking, climbing, and we also work with the U.S. military. So we have found that our customer is really that go-getter that really is putting themselves in some difficult, painful, if you will, situations where they're just trying to get better and work really, really hard. And that can cause a lot of friction, blisters on your feet, or just general chafing from spending time out in the elements. And what we discovered really by accident, when our son was about 6 years old, he really wanted to play in the ocean and boogie board, and we'd go on vacation. We live in South Carolina, and we would vacation on the coast. And within 5 minutes of him playing in the ocean, he was so miserable that he wanted to go back to the room or go to the pool. It was always this back and forth, back and forth. And after we'd shuck all the stuff to the beach, he wanted to turn around and go back to the room because he was in so much pain from this chafing. So we started on this quest to find a solution, and we tried all the things, and nothing worked in saltwater. It didn't work very well. It didn't last very long, or it would transfer to his board, or it was white, and he would suffer and get it under his arms and on his chest. And he didn't want to wear a rash guard because that made it worse. So he just said, I want something that's clear, that will last all day in the ocean. It's not sticky and doesn't attract sand. So those were my marching orders. And after a couple of years of not finding a solution, I just took to my kitchen and blended a solution that worked for him. And then it worked for a lot of the other people that we would vacation with. And then word got around that I made this goo and demand kind of went nuts. We found ourselves completely torn of what to do. I had a full-time career, a completely different life. I'm very comfortable in my career, and my husband was too. And in our typical life in just a suburban neighborhood, and now here we are with a product that we created just for our kid, and people found out about it. So we had to decide, do we keep going with this, and do we make this a real product, or do we pull the plug, because it just about killed us both to do the full-time career and then this little side gig of Salty Britches. So that's kind of the short and dirty story of how we got here.
So, well, how long has this been going on? When did you start?
Gosh, I made it. My son is 17. So he was 6 years old when we first took to the kitchen. And I say we because it was really kind of a family affair with my husband and I, blending and filling. I have a chemistry background, so I had a little bit of knowledge of what to do, some knowledge on different raw materials. And that just came from a chemistry degree and a 20-year career in pharmaceuticals and engineering. So he was around 6 years old. So we blended and experimented with this formula for 4 years without anyone knowing we even were doing this. I didn't know this was even a solution to a larger problem. This was just for my kid. That was my only concern. So we did that for 4 years. And then in 2017, people found out about it. and started communicating with me and messaging me on Facebook. I didn't even have an Instagram. I had a love-hate relationship with social media. I had 0 followers. Like it was not a thing. And then people started messaging us. So in 2018, we had decided, all right, we're going to go all in. And we sold everything we owned. We sold our home. We took our kid out of private school, moved him to public school, and moved to a tiny house and bootstrapped the whole thing. So that's how long it's been going on. And here we are, 2023. We've had a real business with all the real things associated with it for about 5 years. But in fact, we've been doing this a lot longer than 5 years.
So when you first created this product, when it was just a thing you made in your kitchen for your kid to do something that they enjoyed, like I would bend over backwards if my kid said, there is a physical activity outdoors that I will do if you could just solve this one truly terrible problem of chafing. Like chafing, it's the worst. Nobody wants chafing.
And nobody wants to talk about chafing, which is so funny. But nobody wants it. It is super painful, and it can really screw up your adventure or whatever you're doing, whether it's playing soccer, which he did, or playing any kind of sports, or going outside for a hike. When you experience chafing or blisters on your feet, that's a deal breaker. You're done. You don't want to keep going. It hurts.
In entrepreneurship, I have been exposed to an entire world of products that exist to prevent chafing because it's a true pain to solve, right?
Yes.
Thigh Society sells underwear, long like bike style shorts that prevent thigh chafing. They call it chub rub, which I've always enjoyed. A whole like runners for sure have this stuff. Lots of products out there to prevent chafing. Did none of those were going to work because this is like a saltwater specific application?
Bingo. This turned out to be, cracking the code for this turned out to be a really big deal. No, none of those other products held up in salt water. They would initially for maybe 10 minutes, and then it was a constant reapplication. Fabric, we discovered. So fabric is woven, and that's more surface area. So when you get out of salt water, the water evaporates, the salt ions are left behind, and there's more surface area in fabric for them to cling to, which made the problem even worse. So if you're already irritated, and then you have on, say, a rash guard, and they're not all created equal. Some rash guards are better than others. Some bathing suits are better than others, and they are getting better at trying to find fabric, but it's still surface area. So because our kid was just so extra sensitive, it didn't matter what the fabric was. It was just making it worse. So he tried basketball shorts. He tried underwear, no underwear, the rash guards, no rash guards. We did everything from Vaseline to A&D, Body Glide. There are countless options. But the first thing we did was to make our way to the fancy surf shop. Surely this is a problem that affects more than just my son. Do they have any solutions?
You guys went down to Ron John? It's the only surf shop I know.
Well, no. We were in Folly Beach in Charleston, South Carolina, and McKevlin's, which is one of the oldest surf shops on the East Coast, still there and still sells Salty Britches. That's where we went. So we were like, if anybody's going to know, these guys will. So I go in, I'm like, you guys have anything for this? Like, he's so miserable. And they're like, we know it's a problem. We hear about it all the time. Just go to the local CVS and get some diaper cream. So we did that. Miserable. It was a white paste, a zinc paste, which is exactly what you need for diaper rash. But it is sticky and it smears, and he didn't want people to see the white under his arms, and it would transfer to his board, and salt would stick or sand would stick to it. It just made the problem worse. So it was just the fact that it was the ocean, which is an extreme condition with a high amount of salt ions and minerals and all that grit that is just rubbing your skin raw. So that turned out to be the most difficult challenge when it came to chafing. And that was our goal, to prevent that. That's how it translated into triathlon and ultra running. These people are spending time in the ocean. They're getting out of the ocean and they're going through a transition to get on their bike. And then they go from the bike to the run. So they go from salt water to sweat. And that is a gnarly combination for chafing. And there are lots of products in the triathlon world, but something that you don't have to reapply that will withstand all of those conditions. That's how we made a name for ourselves in that space. And then it grew into the ultra running space where people are running 50 and 100 miles at a time, which I didn't know was a thing. Ultra running there's a huge following. There's a ton of people that do it. It's an incredible space, but these people are running very long distances. And they needed a product that they didn't have to constantly reapply that could withstand water crossings, withstand high heat, high humidity. And that's the other trick, is that we're an East Coast formulated brand. And a lot of these competitors are West Coast formulated, dry, arid climates. And it was that high humidity and high heat that was such a challenge using those products. So that's what we had to overcome to create a product that could withstand those gnarly East Coast conditions.
Yeah, my wife's a Disney blogger, and she did a whole bit to try and solve a similar problem for herself. She lovingly called it the boob cream tests. How do you solve under boob sweat? And she bought like all the products off Amazon, tested them by applying them in the park, and like she did it for her podcast, and it was really funny. But where she had like one on the left, one on the right, and like took notes. And for sure, the products were not created equally. And okay, like that's an antiperspirant, different thing, but like they were just all over the place. I consider myself a do-it-yourselfer, but there's no world in which I would ever say, what, I'm going to go formulate an anti-chafing product in my kitchen.
I don't think so
either. What possessed you? What did you have some background? Have you done this before? Like truly, that one is out there.
It is out there, isn't it? I know. It is crazy. No, I've never done anything like this before. That's how desperate I was to solve it for my son. My 6-year-old was so miserable. So, of course, that in turn made me miserable. I just wanted to hang out on the beach and let my kids swim in the ocean and not cry his eyes out every time we went on vacation. Like, it was creating anxiety for the whole family. He really, really suffered, even more so than other kids did. So it was just out of a desperate need to fix it. We came home from a really bad vacation where he was so miserable, and I just had it. So while we were at the beach and we were talking to the surf shops and trying all the different products, and we had gone through years of that, I came home and I'm like, I'm just going to fix this. And I knew I have this love for lanolin. Is an amazing raw material that comes from the wool of sheep. And any woman that's breastfed is familiar with lanolin. And lanolin most closely mimics the lipids in human skin more than anything in nature, and like attracts like. So I thought, that's a natural place to start. Let me just start with lanolin. And lanolin alone is hard to use. It's hard to spread. It's really thick, super sticky. It's just kind of a pain. And all lanolins are not created equal. So I went through that phase of settling on a lanolin from a humane farm that I really liked. So I started with lanolin, and then I just started adding other products that would help get to the final product to meet all of his demands. And I say that in a funny way because he was 6. And if anybody's around a 6-year-old, they can be demanding. But
they have opinions for sure.
Yeah, it couldn't be white. It had to be clear. He didn't want anyone to see it on his skin because he's big, bad, and 6 years old. I'm not going to walk around the beach and somebody can see I have cream all over me. Sunblock is bad enough to get a kid to put on. So it couldn't be white, and it couldn't attract sand because, like I said, he was playing on a boogie board and rolling around in the sand and digging in the sand and doing all the sandy things. And that just makes it more miserable if it's going to stick to everything like Vaseline does. So it couldn't stick to sand, or sand couldn't stick to that. And it had to last. If I had to constantly get him to reapply it, he wasn't going to do it. He wasn't going to use it. This is something that had to bond to the skin. That was my goal. And it could last. So I'd mix up the goo, and we went to the beach a few times that year. Every summer we go a couple of times, and we'd go with other families. So we went this particular next trip, and I had a Tupperware container of my goo, and Trent, my son, puts it on in all the places, especially under his arms, his chest, his groin. We don't give it another thought. Like, here, use this so you can go play in the ocean. Well, then the other moms asked me about it. I'd pass around the Tupperware container in all the condos, and all the moms would let their kids use it. And then the dads wanted to use it. And then the moms are kind of using it. And finally, we were all sitting in a circle on the beach, and all the kids had been in the water for hours. Like, it had not occurred to me that they hadn't gotten out of the water complaining or walking like a cowboy. There were no crocodile tears. Like, it was just not even a thing anymore. And I thought, okay, great. We can hang out on the beach. All the parents are hanging around, solving all of life's problems. The kids aren't getting out of the water. And one of the moms said, you need to tell people about this. You need to post on Facebook that you have a solution to this. And I'm like, are you crazy? This is not a thing. This is just my son really suffered, and this stuff works for him. And that's the end of that. She's like, no, I'm telling you, there's a need for this. So
you'd found the solution that worked. You had developed it yourself.
Yeah.
To solve this pain, this problem in your own life. And you got these other people are like, hey, this works. 100% you have a solution that works here. And even then you got other people telling you, hey, other people need to know, like, get this secret out. We have solved this problem that everybody who spent any kind of time in the ocean has discovered. How did that feel?
Annoying.
It sounds like you didn't believe her.
I had a busy life. The last thing I wanted to do is open this can of worms. Like, I wasn't interested in it. I'd solved it for my kid and other families that were with us, and that was good enough for me. Like, I'm a reluctant entrepreneur, Kurt. But we put it out on my Facebook page. Hey, moms, if you're getting ready to go to the beach and your kids suffer from this, I have a solution. Well, holy cow. I had over 700 comments, instant messages, text messages. I didn't even have 700 friends on Facebook. All these shares, it was bonkers. Right there on the beach, that's when the light bulb went off. Oh my gosh, if I have to make all of this when I get home, I need to set up an LLC and a bank account so that I can order raw materials and I can do this the right way. So right there on the beach, I set up an LLC. Right there on the beach, I opened a new checking account. And right there on the beach, we named it Salty Britches. All that day.
Coming up with a name is the really hard part. I can't believe it's just like, boom, Salty Britches, nailed it.
We were sitting around as a bunch of parents, and I knew I wanted britches in the name. You can't come up with a more Southern term than britches. And somebody said salty. I think it was one of the dads. And I'm like, Salty Britches, that's it. Everybody said, that's it. That's the name of it. Done. So we named it, and I instantly started working on a trademark for the name right there on the beach. All of this was happening that one day.
You did a full 180 here. What was the thing that made you decide to turn this into a business? Because you were reluctant, resistant until you weren't. You went like, no, absolutely not, to I'm all in.
It wasn't quite all in until about a year later, but the light bulb went off when all of those people on Facebook started asking me, what is it? How do I make it? How do I buy it? Where can I get it? Like, holy cow, there really is a need here. These people need this stuff. What am I going to do? Just tell them, no, I'm sorry. I'm not going to make it for you. I'm not going to do that. So that's when the light bulb went off that, hey, there's a real market for this. So I thought, well, this is just a really small niche market. This is not really a thing. I just knew I had to order a lot of expensive raw materials, and I wanted to be able to write it off on my taxes. So that's why I set up the LLC. And
all right.
That's why that was the process in my mind of, okay, what is the right way to order this stuff?
Did you
be able to pay for it?
Depending on the state, LLCs are varying levels of difficult to create. Like in Illinois, they're extremely easy. They're just a little pricey on the fee. Did you use a service, or you were comfortable just filling out the application with the Secretary of State? How'd it go?
No, I actually went on LegalZoom.
Okay.
And did it.
That's how I did mine the first time.
The first time. And then all the attorneys, when you get deeper and bigger, are like, oh, no, don't use.
They're like, why'd you waste your money?
Awesome for me in the beginning.
Yes.
Because it also provided the pathway for the LLC and access to a trademark attorney at a pretty nominal fee. So that's where I started. I would do it that way again if I was going to create a new business. It really helped open my eyes to what was all required. The organization agreement. There's so many things that your state requires. Articles of organization. lots of things. And LegalZoom walked me through every bit of that.
Yeah, they just do it. You just pay
Yes.
here's the flat fee, and then they handle it, and you're good.
Yep. It was very, very easy, surprisingly.
So once you've got that out of the way, and smart that you started with an LLC because it filing your taxes and offers some legal protection. Like you're at day one, you did that, and you nailed the brand name, and you've got the validation of the product. Just like the stars have aligned here. But now you got to get into product development, because just cranking it out in your kitchen in Tupperware, you can't ship that. How do you go from kitchen experiments to a proper consumer product?
That's exactly right. That's what you have to do. So my husband has a background in manufacturing, and I had a little, I know, right?
Just fate.
I know.
Fate. This was meant to be.
It was all God, divine intervention, in my opinion. I had a background in manufacturing a little bit, and then a pharmaceutical background. So we decided to call around to different co-packers or manufacturers for cosmetic products. I knew I didn't need a drug label for this. So a cosmetic label was going to be fine. And I wanted it made in the USA. That was really important to me. So we started calling co-packers / manufacturers, and they all laughed me off the phone. Like, how many do you think you need? Oh, I don't know, 500. And they're like, oh my gosh, when you get to 50,000, call us back. Like, no, thanks, but no thanks.
It's
way
always
too small.
That minimum order quantity gets you in at the start.
So one really nice co-packer said, I tell you what you do. You go online, do a request for information for cosmetic co-packer manufacturer, which is what I did. I Googled it, found the request for information, put out what I needed. Hey, I'm just getting started. I have a product I've developed, and I need to find someone that can blend it and fill it and put it into jars, tubes, whatever I wanted to do. I had one manufacturer reply, and they were in a little tiny town of Mabel, Minnesota. And they were the nicest people. And they said, look, we can help you get started. You can even use our sample line. So we set up a call with these guys in Minnesota, and myself and my husband. And they asked us what we were doing. We signed NDAs, all of that, so I could talk to them about my formula. And they said, is your formula perfect? Like, do you think it's exactly what you want? And I said, no, I actually need a little help with the stability of it, because my formula melted and I didn't want it to melt at such a low temperature. They said, this was also by chance. This is just God directed. They said, we have a contract chemist who's a cosmetic chemist that's a friend of ours, and that's who you need to talk to first. So I looked her up. Her name's Tammy, and she was in Iowa. And I called Tammy and I said, hi, Tammy, I have this product. I've blended it. It's not quite what I want. I think I need some help tweaking the formula. I want to fly to Iowa and come meet you. Now, she is in the middle of Nowhereville, Iowa. She's like, well, people don't typically come here. Like, I have a lab here, and normally we just kind of ship products back and forth. I said, no, I'm coming to Iowa. And I took my son, who at the time I think was maybe 8 or 9. We flew to Iowa, rented a car, my son and I, drive from Cedar Rapids to Nowhereville, Iowa, and go to her lab and sit down across from her. She's got this dry erase board behind her that is slapped full of products that you and I know very well. So she is known across the country as the guru of stability. So products that have trouble with their formulas will contact her to help figure out their formula, and she is independent. Now, this is important because most co-packers have chemists on staff, and if they fool with your formula, tweak it or whatever, there are clauses in there where they may own your formula. So if you're doing anything like this, be very aware and read all the fine print, hire the lawyers, let them read the fine print. I got really lucky because I did not know any better, but I met Tammy very early on in this process. So we tweaked the formula while I was there. It took her 5 minutes. Like, it was a simple tweak. And I'm just a total science chemistry nerd anyway. And I wanted my son to be that way. He's not. Let me tell you that. The kid could care less about anything to do with beakers and pipettes. Like, give him a ball and he's good to go. But science, forget it. We learned that on that trip. He was so bored. But we're in the lab blending and filling and tweaking and playing and got it exactly like I wanted it. So I sat down with Tammy and I said, Tammy, I need you to tell me, am I barking up the wrong tree here? Is this something I need to pursue? Or do I just need to pull the plug? Because this can really be a big expense. She said, no, absolutely, you need to pursue this. I believe 100% you have a product here and there's a market for it. She just kind of spoke life into it. We go home from that trip. I nail down the formula, sign the NDAs and send it to the co-packer. And they want to run us on their sample line, which they do. And then I fly to meet them in Minnesota. And I sit down with them. I look at the products. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm just going to order about 2,000 of them, which is way more than I thought I needed. Well, I get
it's way less than 50,000 though.
Right. I know. I get the first box shipped to our house and it's a big thing. I call all the family in, our first product, we're going to open the product. And about half of them were so bad I couldn't sell them. Like the way they had sealed the tubes, they had twisted the labels around and it wasn't straight. I had about 1,000 tubes that were so crooked, I could not have put them on any shelves. Like they were not sellable. The very next day, I get a call from someone that has something to do with special forces and they're near where we're located and they wanted to have lunch with me and they had gotten word about this product, had gotten some homemade samples of the product and they wanted to know if I could make it in a black tube. And it was the military.
So you haven't even gotten to sell it yet and already the armed forces have showed up and are like, hey, can you make the mil-spec version of this? Incredible.
I had product out there that I had blended and poured in my kitchen. And a local market in town sold that. They were watching what had happened on Facebook and all this communication on Facebook of Salty Britches. You can go to Amy's house and pick it up out of a cooler on her front porch, which is exactly what I did. People would put their money in the cooler and get a jar out of the cooler.
Oh, that's so fun.
I was going nuts trying to figure out how to meet this demand and communicate with all these people and work full time and travel all the time. It was crazy. So this little market saw it and said, hey, why don't you let us sell your product here? And I'm like, thank you, Lord. Yes. So I took a bunch of it to them, Corley's Market in Greenwood. And then there was 105 West, which was a little boutique in Abbeville and a neighboring town. Both of those stores took it from me. And people came and bought it there. So at least got them off my front porch. And that's where these guys found the product, was at that local market. And then I had lunch with them. I had no idea who they were. And I thought, well, I'm sure I can make it in a black tube. I can barely make it in any tube right now. I have 1,000 tubes, in fact, that I cannot sell. Do you want them? And that was my first donation to the military. And I donated those 1,000 tubes that were twisted and messed up. And they said, we don't care what it looks like as long as the stuff is the stuff. We don't care what the tube looks like. So that's how I started that relationship with those guys who are still in my life. They actually helped me write the copy on the black tube, came up with the logo for the military, and it's just been off to the races ever since.
Do you sell the military version?
I do, yes. It's the same product as the
just has
blue. Yes, just marketing with their tube.
That's cool. Is it the same price?
Yep. Everything's the same, except for the fragrance, which is a funny story because the military guys, the fragrance I chose was rose oil in our blue chafing ointment. Rose oil is a natural anti-inflammatory. So that's why I went through. And the only reason I put that in there is because you don't want to smell like cod liver oil and you don't want to smell like lanolin. Neither of those are very nice.
Yeah.
So to neutralize that, I put rose oil in it. Well, the military guys thought it was too sissy. So I gave them the choice. Do you want rose oil or do you want a berry oil? Both basically do the same thing. They just have slightly different. And you really don't smell it. It's just enough to neutralize the fragrance. And they chose the berry oil. And that's the only difference in the products. So it's just packaging and fragrance.
I like that berry. They're like, all right, that's fine. But rose oil, get out of here.
That's exactly how the conversation went, which was so funny. And really, I almost feel like, shoot, I should have just said, suck it up. You're going to deal with the rose oil. Because now I have a whole nother SKU and a whole nother formula. And the changeover for this at the co-packer is much more complicated because now I have a different formula. So they have to empty the machine so they can put the new formula in. So that little tweak made a world of difference in efficiency and changeover. Our formula is what's called anhydrous. There's no water in it. So there's only a few co-packers in the country that will work with anhydrous because it's a pain. It's a pain. And changeover and efficiency and all of those things are part of the price that you have to pay to work with a co-packer. So I've learned an awful lot, but the formula just works. I wouldn't change it. But it's funny because we got that start and I started my website. And
I was going to ask, when do we start selling this stuff online?
Shortly thereafter, and let me tell you, I was clueless about a website. Everybody has an opinion about it. But there was a local guy in town who is the smartest guy ever. His name's Andy Johnston. He's so smart. And he had built a lot of websites for people. So naturally, I called him and I said, I need to build a website. He said, okay. And he knew the whole story and what was happening. He said, we're going to use Shopify because it's by far the best option and has the most, it has most things that you need as far as building the website goes. Let's do Shopify. So I'm like, okay, that's how we'll do Shopify. Yep. So he helped me build our first website. That was an amazing experience too. And then I actually went and hired a guy to help do a lot of the apps and the add-ons and things that we needed to build on the back end. He helped me do a lot of that. So between those two, we got our website up and running. So that's how I got started there. And then I started shipping. Now, we have never done ads. Like I told you in the beginning, I have kind of a love-hate relationship with social media. I just didn't want to give them any of my money that I really didn't have. So at this point, we had not even sold our home or moved to a tiny house and really figured out how we were going to bootstrap the thing. That came after the website creation. Because here I go, okay, now all of a sudden these people are finding us simply from word of mouth and regular social media, not ads. And I shipped product to Syracuse, New York. And mind you, I had no idea who these people were. They turned out to be hockey players. Well, they emailed me and said, we cannot squeeze this out of the tube. It's too cold here. The product has solidified and we can't squeeze it out. And I thought, oh no, like that's not a problem in the South. But up there, it was a problem. So that day, I contacted my chemist in Iowa and I said, all right, I got to tweak the formula again because I need a version for winter that won't freeze. And that became our third SKU, winter skin relief. It won't freeze in the cold, but will melt in the heat. The blue and the black tubes won't melt in the heat, but will freeze in the cold. And it was a result of sending it to Syracuse, New York, to those hockey players. That started a whole avalanche of projects. So at that point, I really thought, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm working full time. My son plays all these sports. We're super, super busy. And I'm spending every waking second on Salty Britches. What are we going to do? So I go to my husband and he's like, we can't not do this. And now he's really risk adverse. I'm the one that is all for change. I'm very open to risk, willing to do whatever it takes. He's much more methodical and analytical. And he's like, we're going to do this. We're going to sit down and make a plan. So we decided to sell our home. I had a sale in my basement with all of my clothes and shoes and purses and all the junk. We sold everything. We had a little tiny house that was in our family that was on a lake that had no closets, no washer and dryer. It was a cabin. It was a weekend cabin. That's where we moved. And then we took our kid out of private Christian school and moved him to public school in a new town where he didn't know a soul. All of that played a role into our story, but that's how we bootstrapped the business. We just sacrificed all of it.
You really, truly went all in.
100%. Greatest thing we ever did. Best decision we ever made.
Sounds like it paid off.
Hardest thing we've ever done. Yeah.
And when you say tiny house, do you mean like those small houses that can fit on a trailer or just like a smaller house?
It's a very small house, but it was built in 1982. So it was a tiny house before tiny houses were cool, much less amenities than the newer tiny houses that they have these days. There's a loft upstairs where my son sleeps. And then there was an extra room there that we made a closet for the family. We have one bathroom, a galley, little tiny galley kitchen, all. And we have loved every second of it. Now, what's really funny is we moved into this tiny house and the property next door was owned by a family, never to be sold. They knew our story. They knew what we were doing. We were able to buy 6 acres that was attached to that little tiny house, and we built a pole barn. And in the pole barn, we built a laundry room. And I'm talking to you right now from that pole barn. This is our headquarters. This is where we store our product. We ship our product. Our employees come and work here, and they fill product here. I have a makeshift lab here. Yeah, it's become the headquarters, and this is still where we do everything. And we're in the backyard of the tiny house. So I can drive up the hill with my laundry, which I do every day, and wash clothes while I'm working in the office. And it just has fit our family so perfectly. We call it the shop. That's what we call it. People visit here. They come here, meet with me here. And we're in the middle of nowhere too, which is kind of a challenge for obvious reasons. We had transfer trucks delivering product, and now we're banned from having transfer trucks because we're down a hill and the transfer truck tries to leave the driveway, and the little legs that you put down on the ground when you drop the trailer, they dug into the asphalt of the highway, all the way across the highway, and we blocked traffic in both directions for about 4 hours. Needless to say, we can't have transfer trucks. So now when we do deliveries, it's box truck only, or we go pick up whatever it is with a trailer. There's been some things we've had to do to kind of figure out what our capabilities are here. But we've overcome them. It's been a great thing. And now we've grown so much, and we have a co-packer in Dallas that we work with that is going to be our fulfillment center as well. So the product actually won't come here. That's something we grew out of having to figure out all of those logistics. So now our co-packer can handle all the big shipments, and we never touch it.
There are some consistent themes here. Let's say you have a painter problem in your own life. We see this with like so many entrepreneurial stories, and there's no good solution. You're able to solve it. Then you see the need. Other people are asking for it. Certainly, there's some fate, some stars align action there. But I think one of the things that's so important here is you're like repeatedly you said, "Oh, they heard our story. They knew our story. They knew about us." There's a story here. People love stories. We are like, for thousands of years, we are storytellers. When you have a compelling story that goes with the brand, and they could put a face to it, they could put a family to it, that I think is really important, and that helps drive your success because it becomes viral, it becomes meme-like, where they're able to share it by attaching the story to the product, and that helped you so much, combined with your vision, your willingness to do the work and to do it in a careful way, where you said, hey, we're going to go all in. And you said your husband's risk averse. By meeting in the middle, you're able to come up with this very same plan of, hey, let's downgrade our lifestyle to free up the cash flow to invest in the business that we're going all in on. I'm sure that was scary.
Oh, that's an understatement. We just were convinced. We have such a belief in really what did it for us is when we were hearing from people we did not know, and they would go out of their way to email us or contact us or call us or send us a message on social media, and we did not know these people. So that's when it really hit me. Okay, this is real. This is not just friends and family that are patting me on the back. Good job. Nice product. We love it. I love those people, but I don't believe those people because they're friends and family. But when it's strangers, and they're messaging you, okay, that you need to do more with this. But it is extremely frightening because it's so far out of a comfort zone. It's not normal. And your whole life is going to shift. And that includes people in your life because people are going to think you're crazy. There's going to be a lot of that. And you have to be okay with that. And that was really hard in the beginning because somewhere in there, I thought I was crazy. Like, what is happening here? How is this forcing me down this path, whether I want to go down it or not? And it did. It just felt like it was such a supernatural draw that I could not have argued my way out of it. Like, I just had to do it. And that it was that pull that I knew, all right, I'm on the path I'm supposed to be on. And we've been all in. And it's cool. And I knew we were good when my 7th grader, after he moved to the new school, who did not know a soul in a country school where these kids have been friends since they were in kindergarten. And my son's the outsider coming in. And he comes to us and he says, it's cool because he didn't get invited to the things. So all these kids were getting together and he was getting left out. And that about killed me. That about made me want to quit. But he came to me and he said, it's okay. I know this is the role I have to play. Now that does not come from a 7th grader. And it almost felt like, well, that's just divine because that's how he feels about it. And that's how he's coping with it. That's how we know, all right, we've got to keep going. We're on the right track here. So that made a difference for us when we knew he was okay. But it was a sacrifice and it was extremely scary, but aren't the best things always on the other side of that?
100%. Amy, what's next for Salty Britches?
Oh gosh, I wish
Where
I
do you
had
go
a
from
crystal
here?
ball. We just keep climbing the mountain. We're just going to keep going. We're not going to stop. So we've grown and gotten the attention of some pretty heavy hitters. We're actually going to be spending some time with Iron Cowboy James Lawrence in October. I'm super excited about that. He's a fan of Salty Britches. If you don't know Iron Cowboy, he did 100 full distance triathlons, 100 days in a row last year. There's documentaries on him. We're meeting people that have put themselves in extreme circumstances, doing extreme things, running across America. Gosh, I don't know how many people we've met that have run across the country. There's a guy right now, Jeff Spire. He has got a huge following. He's a first form athlete. He loves Salty Britches, uses Salty Britches on his feet and his body to run across America. Like this has been a real up level for us, just the people that are using our product. So we're going to do live events, which we've been doing from the very beginning. We do live races. We'll be at the Georgia Jewel in September, which is a 100-mile race through the North Georgia mountains. We'll work some aid stations there. We meet our customers. We've developed these relationships with people that we're cheering for. It's grown into an ambassadorship program for us. We have over 60 ambassadors, and they're all people doing really crazy endurance events. One of them is a kid that is 12 years old that has surfed every day for 1,200 days in a row. Can you imagine the beating your skin takes when you're in salt water every single day? Well, he loves Salty Britches. So we'll develop those relationships more and more, and we're going to do a lot more in the military. That's a huge project for us that we're working on. We kind of have let the product tell us where to go next. And our buckets have turned out to be surf shops, boutiques. We just hired a rep group. We're going to start selling our hats and shirts because the name Salty Britches is so fun.
It's a good name. People
want to wear the gear and have no idea what the product is. So that has come up over and over and over. So we're going to work on that. And it's a lot of fun. We're growing. We're going to be hiring. We're going to be bringing some people in-house instead of just contracting out. We've got a big plan. And the trick for us from day one has been writing that plan down and then backpedaling to figure out how to meet that goal. And that's just worked for us over and over and over, and we'll continue to do that.
That's such good advice. Amy, if I needed to get some Salty Britches, where would I go?
You could find it just about anywhere, but our website, Shopify, we're still big fans of Shopify, is getsaltybritches.com. You can find us on Amazon, Salty Britches. You can find us on walmart.com. Gosh, just Google it. We'll pop up. You can find us.
Fabulous.
We're not hiding from anybody.
We will. I'll get myself some Salty Britches. I'm going with the black mil spec is cool. Like I can't resist that, even if I like the rose. But I'll get some for our next beach vacation. Not a lot of salt water in the Midwest, it turns out.
No, but you have a lot of wind and a lot of cold. And Salty Britches bonds to the skin, so it prevents windburn, but it'll soothe it after the fact too. So dry hands.
You're right. It's really the
lips.
winter one that I need. That Probably. Like February here is just vicious. Yep. Amy Tucker, Salty Britches, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Kurt. I appreciate it. And nobody wants to talk about chafing.